Now this is a funny picture, and this one surprisingly explains today's topic pretty well. For the upcoming 4.4 patch, who exactly should you pull for, but more importantly, who can you pull for? Because while a good bit of people skip unit because they're weak, more people skip because they don't have the right teammates or supports. So let's find out if that's the case for you. By the way, these results come from Alpaca Deck Survey, which we're doing a collab covering the results. So if you're interested in that discussion, you should go check out his video. Now, this video will be releasing using version 4's info. Oh, hello, version 5 released as I was making the video. Gilgamesh buff, the math will be correct for the video. Also, this likely will be accurate to life. See ya! But with that said, let's get right into it. Starting with the elephant in the room, we have the option between a free archer and 3 standard tickets. Okay, but on a serious note, archer Eidolons or a free Gilgamesh. Speaking of Gil, holy memes, is he getting absolutely cooked in V4, which I'll cover a bit later on if it's valid or not. But for now, let's not get sidetracked. To get the obvious out the way, if you like archer and don't care about Gil, get archer. If you like Gil and don't care about archer, then get Gil. If you don't care about either, which I'm part of this boat, then just pull Gilgamesh. You can't go wrong with a free unit. Now, if this doesn't answer your question, then that's what the video is for. To start off, what do we exactly gain from getting Archer's Eidolons? For his E1, it's literally 2 SP. For this, I'll be talking about no Rin. Now, the damage gain is dependent on your particular setup, but doing a quick test with a borrowed E0S1 Archer, in 3 turns I was able to get 5-3-4 arrows with 2 ults and 4 follow-ups. So getting 1 additional shot every time, our MV goes from 7120 to 7840, which in the end results in roughly a 10% damage increase. Again, it will just depend. But it's not that much regardless. Now, when we add in Rin, who's coming in 4.4, because she's generating around 5 skill points per turn, Archer should always be able to shoot 5 shots, making E1 Archer technically become a 0% damage increase. However, let's just say we instead gave this 2 SP to Rin. Well, that translates to 6 gem energy, which is equal to 180% MV every so often. So, with or without Rin, it's not that big of an increase. As such, if you had to choose between E1 Archer or a free Gil, then Gil likely would be the better choice. However, what about E2 Archer? Well, that's a different story. At a base with no supports, it's roughly a 20% damage increase. However, if we were off element, this would allow Archer to get 10% more defense rate via the quantum set, thus resulting in a 27.62% increase. Now, if we add in Sparkle plus Rin, the same setup results in a 16% increase without the quantum set and 25.43% damage if it were. So if we were to consult the chart, the argument for Archer's Eidolons is simply, do we value this damage gain over a free Gil? If yes, then get the Eidolons, and if not, then obviously Gil. With that said, let's see what Gil has to offer, which we just need to answer 2 things. 1. How strong is he? And 2. Do you have his teams? To answer the first one, we can simply compare him to other DPSs. Now, instead of trying to figure out a rotation, I've opted to just copy a Showcase's gameplay, which I thought was pretty decent, and just listed out the MVs that way. Instead of enemies which mechanics and format will impact the results, we simply look at the attacks dished out. While this method will not consider self buffs or ally buffs for time's sake, raw MVs can give us a general idea. We just gotta keep the disclaimers in mind. So with this Showcaser's Archer, every rotation had 5 Archer skills, 1 ult, and 2 follow-ups when accounting for energy via kills and hits. Rin, on the other hand, would just do basics and sometimes skill and ult. Doing the math, our damage looks something like this. Now, because we don't have a reference point, we got no idea what these numbers mean. But just know that this 0 cycled the next MOC in 3 rotations. Yes, I had to add the other 3. But from this data, what's interesting is the sheer amount of damage these joint follow-up attacks do. If Rin was supposed to solve Archer's AoE issue, then she did a banger job. So for you pure fiction Archer fanatics, you can enjoy. However, one thing to note is that because Sparkle and Danheng PT is a single target buffer, the MV is a bit misleading because Rin often isn't buffed. That said, I believe when you're in AoE situations, it may be worth to consider alternating Sparkle advances between the two DPSs to max out that joint attack damage. I mean, just look at the MVs. Also, from my chart, we can infer that you should not slack off building your Rin. Now, if we were to compare Saber plus Gilgamesh, the actions would actually result in the two teams doing pretty comparable damage. So, with that in mind, if Archer is currently tier 0.5 and getting Rin, by the way, this is the second time Archer has dropped to tier 0.5, and both times right before he gets a Giga upgrade. So if you want to predict an Archer upscale, just wait for Pride Wound to drop him to tier 0.5. Okay, but back to the original point. For this situation, the only thing to note is that RMC does give Saber a few extra turns, so Gilgamesh also isn't getting buffed. Regardless, the MVs, regardless the teammates, should hover around this mark, meaning Saber plus Gil are indeed dishing out tier 0 levels of damage. Now, this is a very general statement, and there's a lot of other factors going into this, such as the type of content or support, but for my particular case, I can say that Saber plus Gilgamesh are indeed very strong. So back to my chart, Saber plus Gil equals strong. So if you're into that, then pull Gil, and if not, then probably Archer. Now, before moving on to the final Gilgamesh factor, let me just quickly address V4. TLDR, he got a change which a lot of people didn't like. They removed his action advance for varying amounts of speed. This would result in the crazy amount of Doomposting and memes present. Now, this was actually slightly compensated with him now granting 30% more attack and crit. Using my build with 37 substats, low-key kinda high, his trace buff results in roughly a 14% damage increase for Saber and Gilgamesh too. So the damage difference versus version 3 is equal to 14% Saber increase plus 14% Gil increase minus Gil's rotation damage loss. Now, I'm pretty sure the rotation loss was actually pretty minimal as we were just getting a few extra skills here and there. So overall, it likely was actually a damage increase, which Hunter Key came to the same conclusion. As such, the Doomposting and memes likely wasn't warranted. Now, if you're upset because the change doesn't fit his theme and simplifies his kit, that's fair. However, in terms of actual damage output, there's actually nothing really to be upset about. As for the Doomposting, you may as well just grab some popcorn because the memes are actually kind of funny and you can't really do much to stop it. Now, for the final part to help you decide, it'll just come down to his teams. TLDR, if you have Saber, you should pull. It's a massive upscale. If you're okay with the Asheville plus Mort wheelchair, you can pull. However, his final playstyle, the Corner Chair King, as if the wheelchair wasn't enough, TLDR, the units at 220 plus energy, such as Herda, Yunli, Archer, and Aglaya, are technically viable teams. He gives around 120% attack and crit, which isn't too bad for someone who just kinda sits there. As for E1 versus S1, it's E1 and it's not even close. Gil at the end of the day is a sub DPS, and sharing that 30% death shred to allies is just too good. Not to mention, it really helps his ult uptime. With that said, the Gil and Archer section is done. And next up, we got Himeko Nova. By the way, I'm going into this assuming you know how she works. If not, you can just check out my V1 video going over it, although the numbers now are drastically different, so you can just focus on the concepts. Anyways, because Himeko is just a very strong DPS, I'm not going to cover if she's strong enough, but just the team options she has available to see whether or not you can pull. However, I do want to set up some crucial rules you need to follow in terms of her team building, which will apply even alive. Firstly, if you decide to play form swapping Himeko, 1. Your verdict unit or Danheng PT must go before Himeko, whether he's the slowest or fastest unit on the team. 2. Your Decimation unit or Welt must go directly after Himeko. 3rd, your flex lock can't be any speed. So team building wise, for the swapping variant, we have Welt, Flex, Danheng PT to Himeko, or Himeko, Welt, Flex to Danheng PT. If you're running attack boots and have Sparkle, then Sparkle would just pull Himeko into Welt and lastly Danheng PT. Besides that, the other thing you need to know is how her forms impact her gameplay. Basically, Himeko has two forms called Verdict and Decimation. Decimation in theory focuses on the skill, and Verdict, Himeko's ult. However, the stat distribution between her two forms is pretty messed up. This is as of version 4, so just keep that in mind. By converting the self buffs into crit and factoring in her damage distribution, you can see that they give very similar amounts of stats. Now, performance will vary depending on the supports. For example, while Verdict indeed gives more stats, in a team such as Blade plus Welt, because you get so much damage bonus, Decimation, the form which gives less stats, would actually be a bit better. Regardless, at the moment it seems the main deciding factor would just be enemy format, as the buffs for each form would result in similar results. As such, if AoE, pick Decimation. If single target, then pick Verdict. I know, very boring, but that's just how it is. All that matters is getting her extra assist skills out on time. With that in mind, let's see what options we got laying around. Look, we got a lot of teams. TLDR, you can mix and match and it'll probably be very good. These are just some team options I thought of which are likely viable. What's optimal for Himeko would just depend on the enemy and format, so I wouldn't really know how to rank these based on how good they are. The main point of this chart is to simply say, if you have any one of these teams, then you can likely play her. After version 3's change which buffed her stance amps, she actually became a lot more flexible, which is why our chart is as diverse as it is. The only thing of note I'd say would be Sunday's upcoming Nova Flare. It was confirmed a while back, and although we don't really know what it'd do, he'll likely be her best in slot support in the future. As such, if you're playing for the long game, the Sunday Sparkle or Sunday Welt comp likely would be her best team in the future. With that out the way, I want to cover her E1 versus S1. For this, I've opted to calculate two of her main teams that will probably be used. By the way, let me emphasize, this is raw damage and will not account for the rotation differences provided by S1. Anyways, I got the Welt plus Blade variant, as well as the Sunday plus Sparkle variant. As you can see, due to the stat differences of the teams, the results will slightly shift depending on what you have. If you have a lot of defense shred such as with Welt, the signature's defense shred becomes a lot more valuable. But for the most part, it should hover around a 27 to 38% increase depending on your team. One thing to note is that post version 3 Himeko should always be down energy to cleanly 2-turn ult. Her Sig solves this and lets her ult 1 turn sooner generally. Now I believe this isn't a big deal unless you need a timer switches. My logic is that you'll need 25 assist skills to generate enough energy for 1 extra ult, which will take quite some time. However, I have seen people claim otherwise. As for her E1, this reduces her extra assist skill trigger requirements by quite a bit, but as well as give her 1 extra trigger per rotation. Now, what I'm about to say will use her swap variant as I'm very confident with the rotation I used. In this case with 6 Himeko actions, 3 extra assist skills will result in roughly a 18% damage increase. Something to note is that E1 also solves her energy issue as 1 extra trigger means a teamboard energy, which should let you cleanly get that 2-turn ult most of the time. So when comparing the two, S1 definitely results in a higher raw damage increase. However, E1 makes her much more versatile with how she performs in bad matchups, aka single target for Decimation mode and slow ultimates in Verdict. Do you want more potential damage or a higher damage floor? So with that said, we're now done with Himeko and we can now move on to Rin. Rin's a bit complicated. To refer to my flowchart, firstly ask yourself this: do you want tier 0 archer? If yes, pull Rin. If no, don't pull Rin. And wait, is that all of it? Yeah, that's actually all of it. I'm keeping it super simple because if you watch my prior 2 videos, it's gonna legit be me saying the exact same thing twice over. But I'll give a rough breakdown for this video. Amp-wise, it's now roughly a 30 to 35% raw damage increase compared to E0S0 Trivi, meaning 5 to 10% more damage than E1 Trivi. However, Rin's adding a metric poop ton of MPs because of her joint attack. SP-wise, while Trivi makes 0.33 SP per turn, Rin's making 4 to 5 per turn. So when adding these three factors together, it's a big PP damage increase. As for her E1 versus S1, TLDR, 99% of the time it'll be S1, because sharing that defense pen is OP for her team, while E1 is only for main DPS Rin. Yes, it helps sub DPS Rin, but at that point just get S1. And yeah, that's the entire video. I'm not gonna have a final summary this time around because I think my flowcharts throughout the video have been doing a pretty good job. With Rin and Gil likely being permanent units, there's no rush whatsoever to pull them and you can legit do whatever you like. Hopefully, this video will help you understand the value of each investment and help you probably plan for the future. Besides that, I'm wanting to do like 2 more fun videos before 4.5 because I actually really don't like me doing 4 beta videos back to back. I like to alternate, which I'll likely do once 4.5 comes out. Besides that, thank you guys so much for watching. Check out Mr. Alpaca Deck because he's been a blast to work with, and peace!